Mother says her daughter lived in fear no human should ever know before being fatally stabbed 78 times by ex, reports. In March of 2022, a young woman named Mackenzie Anderson, just 21 years old, was brutally murdered by her ex-boyfriend Tyrone Thompson. The details that have emerged paint a horrifying picture of domestic violence and the palpable fear that consumed Anderson's life in the weeks leading up to her death. Her mother, Tabitha Acret, has bravely shared the extent of her daughter's suffering, revealing a tragic story of a system that ultimately failed to protect her. Give a like and subscribe. Leave a comment. The scene of the crime was Anderson's own apartment in Mayfield, Australia, a place that should have been her sanctuary. Thompson broke into her home and subjected her to a horrific attack. He fatally stabbed Anderson 78 times, using 2 kitchen knives in a frenzied act of violence. The attack unfolded with terrifying speed, lasting only a few minutes between 10:48 p.m. and 10:50 p.m. local time. Tyrone Thompson, who was 25 years old at the time of the murder, pleaded guilty to the crime. Disturbingly, he had a prior history of domestic violence against Anderson, for which he had been jailed. He was released on parole just 16 days before he took Anderson's life. Thompson had been diagnosed with schizoaffective disorder and PTSD, further complicated by a severe personality disorder. Mackenzie Anderson lived in constant fear of Tyrone Thompson. She desperately sought help, making multiple calls to emergency services. She reached out to domestic violence advocacy groups, pleading for assistance and protection. Anderson requested security measures for her apartment, such as security doors and cameras, hoping to create a barrier against the escalating threat. She expressed her explicit fear that Thompson would kill her, a fear that tragically became reality. Her pleas for help, despite her persistent efforts, went unanswered. Tabitha Acret's victim impact statement is a testament to a mother's immeasurable grief and guilt. She described the moment she learned of her daughter's murder as an event that irrevocably altered her world. Acret felt as though her soul had been fractured, a wound that may never fully heal. She painstakingly pieced together the digital trails of Anderson's desperate attempts to protect herself, uncovering the full extent of her daughter's fear. Acret expressed profound sorrow and guilt over not fully knowing the depth of the violence Anderson endured. In a heartbreaking detail, Anderson had requested a new set of knives for Christmas in 2021. Tragically, Thompson allegedly used one of those very knives in the brutal murder. In her final weeks, Anderson was sending emails to domestic violence advocacy groups, begging for help and support. One group chillingly replied after her death, simply closing her request for support, a stark symbol of the systemic failures that led to her demise. On the night of the murder, Anderson's male friend bravely came to her aid, arriving at her apartment. He witnessed the horrific scene of Thompson repeatedly stabbing Anderson, a trauma that will undoubtedly haunt him forever. Police arrived to find Anderson unconscious and suffering from multiple stab wounds. Thompson confessed to the crime, admitting to the brutal attack on Mackenzie Anderson. He claimed that a heated argument had led to the violence, attempting to frame his actions as a crime of passion. He expressed remorse for his actions in a letter to the court, a gesture that rings hollow in the face of the irreversible damage he inflicted. Mackenzie Anderson was consistently failed by the very systems designed to protect her. Her attempts to seek help were met with inadequate responses and ultimately inaction. Acret stated that her daughter's death was not a surprise, but rather a death in slow motion, a tragic culmination of ignored warnings and systemic negligence. This case serves as a stark reminder of the tragic consequences of domestic violence and the urgent need for systemic change. Acret's statement underscores the immense fear and suffering that Anderson endured in her final weeks. The system's failure to protect Anderson is a critical point that demands accountability and reform. This is a story of a life stolen, a system broken, and a mother's enduring grief. Domestic violence is not an isolated incident. It's a pattern of coercive and controlling behavior. It often escalates over time, becoming more frequent and severe. the abuser seeks to isolate the victim from their support network, eroding their self-esteem and making it harder for them to leave. This isolation can take many forms, from controlling who the victim sees and talks to monitoring their phone and social media activity. Fear is a powerful weapon in the hands of an abuser. It can paralyze victims, making them afraid to speak out or seek help. The fear of retaliation, of further violence, or of losing their children can keep victims trapped in abusive relationships. This fear is often justified, as abusers are known to escalate their violence when they sense their control slipping away. The legal system often struggles to adequately protect victims of domestic violence. Restraining orders, while intended to provide protection, are often violated. The burden of proof can be high, and victims may face skepticism or disbelief from law enforcement and the courts. The system can be slow and cumbersome, leaving victims vulnerable to further abuse. Domestic violence advocacy groups play a crucial role in supporting victims and advocating for systemic change. They provide a range of services, including counseling, legal assistance, and safe housing. They also work to raise awareness about domestic violence and to educate the public about the signs of abuse. These groups are often underfunded and overwhelmed, struggling to meet the growing demand for their services. Children who witness domestic violence are deeply affected. They may experience emotional trauma, behavioral problems, and academic difficulties. They are also at a higher risk of becoming victims or perpetrators of violence themselves. The impact of domestic violence on children can last a lifetime, affecting their relationships, their mental health, and their overall well-being. Early intervention is crucial in preventing domestic violence from escalating. This includes identifying and addressing risk factors such as substance abuse, mental health issues, and a history of violence. It also includes providing support and resources to victims and holding abusers accountable for their actions. Intervention can take many forms, from individual counseling to community-based programs. Addressing domestic violence requires systemic change. This includes strengthening laws and policies, improving training for law enforcement and the courts, and increasing funding for victim services. It also includes challenging societal attitudes that condone or excuse violence against women. Systemic change requires a coordinated effort from all sectors of society, including government, law enforcement, the courts, advocacy groups, and the community. The voices of survivors are essential in shaping the response to domestic violence. Their stories provide valuable insights into the realities of abuse and the challenges of seeking help. Their experiences can inform policy and practice, ensuring that the needs of victims are at the center of the response. Listening to survivors is a crucial step in creating a more just and equitable system. The path forward requires a commitment to ending domestic violence. This includes raising awareness, challenging harmful attitudes, and providing support to victims. It also includes holding abusers accountable and working to prevent future violence. Ending domestic violence is a complex and challenging task, but it is a goal that we must strive for. Mackenzie Anderson's story is a tragic reminder of the devastating consequences of domestic violence. Her life was cut short by a man who abused and controlled her. Her death is a loss for her family, her friends, and the community. We must remember Mackenzie and honor her memory by working to prevent future tragedies. This is a call to action. We must all do our part to end domestic violence. This includes speaking out against abuse, supporting victims, and advocating for systemic change. We must create a society where everyone is safe and free from violence. Let Mackenzie's story be a catalyst for change. The legal proceedings that follow a domestic violence murder are often long and arduous. The victim's family must endure the pain of reliving the trauma, while the legal system seeks to hold the perpetrator accountable. The pursuit of justice can be a difficult and emotionally draining process, but it is essential for providing closure and ensuring that the abuser is held responsible for their actions. The trauma of domestic violence extends far beyond the physical injuries. victims often suffer from emotional distress, anxiety, depression, and post-traumatic stress disorder. The psychological scars can last a lifetime, affecting their relationships, their self-esteem, and their overall well-being. Healing from trauma requires ongoing support and access to mental health services. Domestic violence has a ripple effect, impacting not only the victim, but also their family, friends, and community. Children who witness domestic violence are particularly vulnerable, experiencing emotional trauma and behavioral problems. The community as a whole suffers from the loss of productivity, increased healthcare costs, and the erosion of social trust. Prevention is key to ending domestic violence. This includes educating young people about healthy relationships, challenging gender stereotypes, and promoting respect and equality. It also includes addressing the root causes of violence, such as poverty, inequality, and lack of opportunity. Prevention requires a long-term commitment and a multifaceted approach. Despite the challenges, there is hope. Hope that victims can find safety and healing. Hope that abusers can change their behavior. Hope that society can create a world free from violence. This hope must be nurtured and sustained through ongoing efforts to raise awareness, provide support, and advocate for change. Mackenzie Anderson's legacy can be one of change. Her story can inspire others to speak out against domestic violence, to support victims, and to work towards a more just and equitable society. Her memory can serve as a reminder of the importance of prevention, intervention, and accountability. Let her life be a catalyst for positive change.